Out on the Western Pizza Guest Hotline and joining us, voice of the Saskatoon Blades, Les Lazaruk. Les, you're in Edmonton. You're getting ready for this 6 versus 3, the Blades against the Oil Kings. First time since 1971 that an Edmonton and Saskatoon WHL club, as they've clashed in the playoffs. That's hard to believe.
Well, it is hard to believe, and yet it isn't. I mean, the Oil Kings, that iteration of the Oil Kings ended up moving to Portland in 1976, and then there was no such thing as an Edmonton Oil Kings for 30 years until they were reborn when the Oilers decided, let's have a major junior team in our city and occupy Rexall Place at the time back in 2006. So it's been 20 years. There's a lot of chances that you could have played against Edmonton in the playoffs since then, but for whatever reason, teams were good one year, not so good another year. You played somebody else a lot more times, but here's the way it ends up being. You finally get an Edmonton Blades first-round matchup in the playoffs, so it's going to be cool to see.
How can we handicap this series? What can you tell us?
Well, what I can tell you is that Edmonton, it really was going all in at the trade deadline, and they've had their share of injuries. They seem to be pretty healthy now, although there's rumor that Miroslav Holinka, their top scoring center, might be out of the lineup. We're at that point in time of the season, Barney, going into playoffs where everything's a secret. Even if you ask, until you actually see the teams come out onto the ice, you have no idea. I mean, the Blades are very coy with the status of Rowan Calvert, their leading goal scorer from this year. He injured upper body injury in the second last regular season game in Prince Albert last Friday. He didn't play on the Saturday in the return matchup at SaskTel Center. Will he be in the Blades lineup tonight? I don't know. He took the morning skate. It was an optional this morning. He took it. He looks fine, but we'll see whether or not he's able to go tonight. So for both teams, there's injury concerns, and that makes it a little more difficult to handicap. But really, when you get right down to it, Edmonton made the moves at the trade deadline to try and make themselves better. They fell off the pace behind Medicine Hat and Prince Albert, surprisingly. But they're a good team. They're a veteran team. They've got some real depth up front. Their captain, Gavin Hodnett, was out the first half of the season. He's back, and he's back to being a factor on their power play as well as a top six forward. Added Carter Sutherland on defense from Portland. He has basically become the quarterback on the power play, along with Ethan McKenzie, who, of course, played for Canada at the World Juniors. So this is a really good team, a deep team, a veteran team from top to bottom, and the Oil Kings really believe that they have a shot at going places before this season is done.
Will home ice in this series be that important lesson? Maybe not so much for the atmosphere, but just that last change, or are these teams deep enough where, a third line can match up with a first line?
I think that it is a big deal. I think Edmonton has deeper people going forward. Again, if Calvert's not able to go for the Blades, that takes away a key component for them. I think because what Calvert does, he really doesn't play on the first line a lot. For most of the season, he was on a third line, a checking line, with the other 20-year-old, Tyler Parr and Kasdan Matthews in the middle. They had 6 other forward that they'd like to use, although late in the season, Calvert was seen playing on left wing with Cooper Williams and Hunter Lang. So it's hard to know for sure what Dan De Silva is going to do, but a lot of it's going to depend on whether Calvert can go or not. Having said that, I think Edmonton has an advantage with their depth up front, and the Blades have a tough time matching up with it. But if they can get the effort that they've gotten from some of their lesser lights, some of their bottom 6 people, then maybe it's not that big of a deal. But to answer the question briefly, succinctly, home ice is a big deal, I think, in this series.
Okay, I'm a Saskatoon guy. You know that. Been around there for years. But, the Blades are back in the playoffs. Saskatoon fans getting accustomed to postseason hockey. I don't know. I think it's 7 years in a row, I think I read. Now, we're for a lot of years less, and I know this, I think Blade fans, they just thought that after that last home game, the ice plant was just automatically always shut off.
Yeah, That's true. I mean, there was that time after they hosted Memorial Cup in 2013, and the next 5 years, the ice plant was shut off. There was no playoff hockey. But ever since then, it's been 7 straight years. It would have been 7 had there been a completion of the 2019-20 season, which, of course, got scuttled by COVID. And then, of course, there was no 2021 playoffs because of the bubble in Regina. And yet that Blades team, if they'd have gone based on those 24 games that everybody in the Eastern Division played, the Blades would have been in the playoffs as well. So you can almost say it's 8 seasons in a row. They've had 9 straight winning seasons. So it's been a pretty good run for this franchise, and a lot of credit goes to GM Colin Priestner, Associate GM Steve Hildebrand, and head scout Dan Tenser.
Let's talk about that. I saw Hilty when he was down here for the Sask first. Hadn't seen him in a lot of years. Like that, I remember sitting in his room down in the bowels of Sask Place while he sharpened skates or he fixed some palms on the gloves as the trainer of the team, and then now he's associate GM, like you said. But I want to talk about that Legends Night and how special that was. Mark Watton, I was a fan of those Blades teams back when I was a kid, but then Hildebrand and then Kelly Chase. How special was that, Les?
Oh, it was incredible. It's the best idea that this franchise has had since Jim Piggott put together the idea of having a Saskatoon Blades way back in 1964. There is so much that has gone through that team, through that franchise over 62 years now. 1,127 players have worn the jersey. There's been 27 head coaches. There have been like 8 or 9 GMs, 4 different ownership groups or owners, period. It's an iconic franchise, and this is way overdue, having a Hall of Fame. Yeah, you've got numbers that are retired up in the rafters and a builder's banner. That's all nice, but what they've now put on the concourse level at SaskTel Center is permanent. You can't take it away, and they're just so many guys. And I mean, it was great to see so many alumni come back. The guys that came back for Watton and for Chase was fantastic. Just seeing all those fellows and getting a chance to briefly. I still had a game to broadcast that night, but it was wonderful to be able to touch base with a lot of those guys again.
Yeah, super nice. Okay, I want to go off from this series and from the Blades for a bit and ask you a couple of things here, because you're now on your push to call 3,000 games, I think, in the league. How many years is it now? Total years calling dub games?
This is my 32nd season doing Saskatoon Blades hockey.
Okay, so I want to ask you, all your years you've been calling WHL games, who were the best, or was there 2 brothers, let alone twins, that did what the Ruck boys are doing in Medicine Hat, that leading the league in scoring? I don't remember any brothers, let alone twins, Les.
Yeah, no, I don't remember twins either. Certainly, brothers, not the same time. The closest might be the Federicos here. You had Bernie and the other one. I can't remember his name right offhand. I'm terrible. Kenny Federico. I should remember it because here's a quick story, okay? So when cell phones were just coming out, remember how they used to be in bags? Yeah. And you had to pull them out, and it was like, it was like Get Smart almost. You had these bag phones that you pulled out, and you had them on batteries, and the batteries didn't last long. Mm-hmm. So we come to do a game in Kelowna, and the phone line for the broadcast is not working on a Sunday night. Mm-hmm. And I go see Bruce Hamilton, and I says, your phone line's not working in the visitor's booth. And he goes, well, it was working last night. And I said, that doesn't help me now, Bruce, for goodness sake. I need to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to broadcast. And so now you're trying to get hold of BC Tel. It takes them forever to get there. They didn't get there until 5 minutes left to go in the second period. I was finally on the air. In the meantime, I'm using bagged cell phones. Yeah. Jack Brodsky's, Darryl Libanecki's, Kenny Federico's. I ran them all dry trying to call the game and running out of juice and having to go down into the lobby to find a real phone that phone back and do updates and that sort of thing until I finally had a BC Tel guy repair. So Kenny Federico was involved in one of those funny blooper-type stories for broadcasters. But Kenny Federico and Bernie Federico would be probably the 2 brothers that were playing at the same time that had, that kind of an effect on a team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. But, I think there needs to be some sort of 30 for 30 or documentary done on these Twins, because I don't know if we'll ever see this again.
No, probably not. And the thing is that the Blades are involved in the fact that they're together, because they actually had the opportunity to draft them and made a deal with Medicine Hat that the Tigers would use their draft pick to pick the other Ruck twin when the time came. So they were able to pick them pretty much back to back and have them on the same roster, because they were pretty much a package deal.
Oh, I am so glad you just said that, because that was my next question. Do you know how they both ended up in Willie Desjardins' lap? So the Blades did have a hand in that.
They certainly did.
Ah, amazing. Geez, look at this informative program today. Okay, while we're talking about Medicine Hat and Willie, Desjardins, where does he rank as the best coach / GM in league history? There's been a few, but would he be top 10, top 5 ever?
Top 5 easily. He might even be top 3. I mean, he was certainly among the most recent guys. He would have to probably be among the top, if not the top, because he also, don't forget, he was pretty darn good before he went to the NHL and spent 9-10 years chasing pros around, and then. So back in the early 2000s, his time in Medicine Hat, and now the last several years with the Tigers, he's had just a laundry list of great teams and great results for that franchise.
Okay, and lastly, I want to ask you, of all the series across the entire league, which one intrigues you the most?
Oh, boy, there's a lot of good ones just in the opening round. Brandon and Calgary, I think, will be interesting just because it's the one with the closest standings differential. There's only 3 points separating those two. I think that's got the makings of a great 7-game series, and I think Brandon's going to win it in 7. I think they've got the talent to overcome Calgary's talent and youth. Calgary's going to be good next year again, mark my words. Brandon, I think for them, they've got a lot of guys, although they also point to some of their young guys like Jackson Jacobson and those types that are going to be back next year. But I think Calgary has the better younger group than what Brandon does moving forward. But I think the Wheat Kings have the chance to be winners there. The intriguing one, of course, is also going to be Everett and Portland, because everybody knows about how the Silvertips, even though they're the Scotty Munro winners, seem to always find a way to lose out in the playoffs, and certainly in the last 3 years they've lost to Portland, and yet it's Everett number 1 seed against 8 seed Portland. It shouldn't even be a contest, but just it's there in the back of the heads, I'm sure, of a lot of people, maybe more so Portland, as it gives them impetus. Everett, I think they'd like to forget about the last 3 years. Guys like Carter Bear and them, I think they just want desperately to forget about that.
Well, playoffs are here. You're calling playoff hockey again. Golf courses aren't open anyway, so you got nothing else to do. You might as well call some hockey for a few weeks or a month or so. Yep. Anyway, always a pleasure. Thanks for making some time on game day, Les.
Not a problem, Barney. Any old time.